Okay, hi everybody. We're going to have my setup set up so I can try and do notes in this video, and hopefully it's going to work out well. I will try to do my best to make it as easy to read as possible. So we're going to start out by doing some notes about sexual selection in terms of like making a sexual selection model. So if you remember, we had before a natural selection model where we kind of had some steps or some conditions for how natural selection worked, and then tried to apply that to new situations. So after kind of looking at your responses from earlier, and I am imagining what the Bowerbird CERs might have looked like. I didn't get to see them, but I heard from a couple people some questions and everything. So I thought this might be helpful for us because you are going to have to, on your test, you're going to have to explain how something could evolve through sexual selection. So let's try and make a model of that. Okay, so sort of the first sort of requirement for sexual selection to happen would be that one of the, like one sex, like male, female, right? And we're going to say like typically this is the male. Typically males compete for access or attention from mates. So they're competing for mates. Compete for mates. And this could be a female competing for a male, or it could be a male competing for a female. But typically in like the natural world, the males are competing for the females. The second requirement, right, is that the opposite sex from the competing one, and this is typically females, choose only the healthiest, best males. Or at least they do their very best to do that, right? Oh, I said males. Let's say mates instead, although it is typically males, right? Okay, so first condition, there's competition for mates. Second condition, the opposite sex is choosing only the best from that sex that's competing with one another, right? So typically we got the females choosing from amongst males that are competing with one another. And of course, all different kind of species compete in different ways. We've got like the deers that, crash their antlers together and fight for who gets the territory and that kind of stuff. And then we have those birds that do the dances and all different kinds of things like that, right? Okay, the third thing, okay, that happens here is that the trait which attract the most mates get passed down. I don't know if attract is always the best word because not always attraction. Let's just say which get or attract the most mates get passed down. Okay. And are increased over time. So we could imagine an example where like a peacock. So peacock tail example. So we could have started out, and I'm just going to move my notes down a little bit here so you can see more. We can imagine that we start out with a male and female that are similar. That are physically similar, like sometime in the distant past. Okay, so we basically have like, you know, here's my beautiful art, guys. We have two birdies, okay, and they look pretty similar, right? Nothing exciting going on here, okay? And this is our male, and this is our female. All right. And so at first, they're really similar to each other. And then one day, for like one generation, this male comes around or is born with this difference, right? So the male is born with this difference where he's got a fancier tail. So fancy tail appears. Okay, obviously it's not as fancy as like a really fancy peacock, right? And our female is like, oh la la. Love, love, love. That's amazing, right? Like, oh, he is so healthy to grow this beautiful tail, right? And then those tails get passed down in the generation. So we started here, then we have one generation, we get this fancy tail peacock, right? And I'm just going to continue over here on the side in the corner. It's number 1, 2, sorry, my camera is shaky. 1, 2, and then number 3 would be fancy tail passed down. And then over generations, tails get fancier. And because the females choose the fanciest tail, over many generations, then we end up with our peacock, right? What a beautiful drawing. What a beautiful drawing. Ha! Call the Louvre. All right. So here's our not so beautiful peacock. And then voila, at the end, until the peacock has evolved, right? So we have our example. We've got the male and the female looking pretty similar, but the males are competing for the females. Having this like slightly fancier tail makes the females more likely to choose him. He gets chosen. And then that repeats over generations and generations and generations. They're always choosing the fanciest and the biggest tails until finally we get peacocks with these fabuloso tails, right? So that's an example of how the peacock tail could have evolved by sexual selection. So hopefully this model will kind of help you to figure it out. If you see a trait and you want to be like, okay, how could that have evolved by sexual selection? You can apply these ideas to it. Okay, so that is the end of notes part 1. Let me see if I can pause this thing.